was me or you. Everybody's still coming in, but it's about time to begin. And I guess that Brother Paul and Sister Phyllis are made it safely out to somewhere in Colorado, right? Everybody's out there in Breckenridge, Colorado. Yeah, I had an aunt that her last name was Breckenridge, and several cousins. It's good to see everybody this morning, and I don't know that anything in particular to report. A lot of our people are out vacationing, seeing the sights of the country, and that's good. Jim and I have been out there once or twice. Terry, I think, has been out that way. So, good to be with you this morning. We're going to be in Genesis 39. Got your books there, Andy. And at the right time, I think Brother Dan has the announcements this morning. He'll bring the announcement to you. So if you got anything you need to have announced between class session and worship, you might pass that on to Brother Dan. We've been engaged in a study of the Old Testament in the chronological order of things, and we're going to depart from that just a little bit here and look back and see what God has intended for us to see here in just a minute. So, is there those that we need to pray for this morning? Brother James. We need to remember him. He's undergoing several tests and things with his leg, and so they haven't figured that out yet, but they're working on it. And Sister June? Oh, okay, so Sister's going to have procedure, and coming up, what day? Oh, okay. So they're just going to do some tests for that? So you're actually going in for replacement of a valve? Yeah. Well, so he's doing better then. Great. Good to see Brother Mike back. Not for long, but he's back. We got him all loaded up and down to Texas. They get it unloaded? Yeah, good. All right, anything else? Let's go to God in prayer. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to study your word, to glean things from it, Father, to help us, to strengthen us as we endeavor to serve you in this life. Father, we pray for those who are undergoing procedures and those that are still undergoing tests. And we pray that you would be with those that minister health care to them, that it might just be the right thing, Father, that they might have the health that they desire, and all might be well with them, Father. Help us, Father, to be your servants and be with this time together, that your name be glorified, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we're in Genesis 39, but I want to start there by just reading the first verse. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him at the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. Now let's drop back over to 37 and 26, because this is sort of where the word leaves off, the chronological order of these events that are going to take place on 39. So here in 37 and 26, and Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Well, what had happened, they had become very jealous of Joseph, And so his dad had given him a coat of many colors. We all remember that from Bible school time. And so they had thrown him into a pit. He had come out to them, and so they caught him, threw him into a pit. But at least one brother wasn't in favor of that. They said, "Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh and our brethren." And his brethren were content. And they were passed by. Then there passed by the Midianite merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they bought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned into the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. He rent his clothes. So evidently Reuben was one out of all the rest of the brothers that was not in favor of doing anything to Joseph. But the rest of them were very distraught, and so they thought to do him harm. So they threw him in the pit. I think they even contemplated possibly murder, but then they decided, now we're not going to murder him. We're going to just sell him into the Ishmaelites. And of course, we know how the rest of the story goes, that they put some goat's blood upon his coat, showed it to their father, and said, "This is his coat. Surely he's been torn to pieces by wild animals." So Jacob is very grieved and sorrowful, and as you would be if you had lost a son or a daughter. So now then, it brings us up to chapter 39. Now, the Spirit, for some reason, departs from the events of the day, which is bringing Joseph into that pit and bringing him out and selling him into the hands of these Ishmaelites, to tell us about Rahab and Judah. And I suppose that's in lieu of, or the importance of all that is that it's going to manifest itself in the birth of Jesus. When you read the chronology or the ancestry of Jesus in the Matthew 1, you'll see that Rahab is mentioned in that, in Judah and what was her name? Tamar. So, and of course the others has come along down through the history of the Bible. But now then we get back into Joseph. So I thought I'd just lay the groundwork for that and let you see that what God had was revealing to us through the Spirit here and now. Joseph was brought into Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in the house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, and the blessings of the Lord were upon all that he had, and in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and he knew not aught that he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. Well, it just seems that now Joseph is down there. He has been brought down there by the Ishmaelites. Now, what does that have to do with what we know about the sons and daughters of the ancestors now. Who are these Ishmaelite people? Half brother to Isaac, which what was his half brother's name? Ishmael. Ishmael, of course. So now you've got the Ishmaelites, which were descendants of the son of Hagar, the Egyptian handmaiden of Sarah. And so now then we've got these Ishmaelites, which were a caravan of traders that moved through this area of the world, and they were going on down into Egypt to trade. Well, that would have been accepted by the Egyptian people pretty well because of their ancestry. They were part Egyptian, weren't they? Their mother was an Egyptian. So no doubt that they had favor of the Egyptian people. And so now they brought down this little Hebrew boy into Egypt with them, and they sell him now into slavery. Well, this fellow's name that bought him was Potiphar, and Potiphar was the captain of the guard, and he was also a director of the prison. So he had great authority under Pharaoh, and so Joseph, then being bought by Potiphar, came into his house, and then everything that he did for Potiphar was successful. And so it says, and God was with him. In fact, there are 6 times in these 23 verses of the 39th chapter of Genesis that the Spirit mentions that God was with Joseph. Now, there's a divine plan in all this. So we have to see that God is allowing Joseph to be thrown into that pit, to be hauled down there by Ishmaelites and sold at public auction to Potiphar, which was captain of the guard, which was high-ranking officer under Pharaoh. So I might just point out that Josephus notes that being a high-ranking officer, that he was probably a eunuch. And the reason for that was that the heads of state thought that this would allow them a more security, so that these men would not be intending or trying to overthrow the regime or the king or the Pharaoh and become rulers. So he was probably a eunuch. So here he is down here. He's in Pharaoh's house, in Potiphar's house. God's blessing him over all that he does. Yes. Say again.
Who are you saying was likely a eunuch?
Likely.
Who are you saying was likely a eunuch? Are you saying Joseph was a eunuch? Potiphar.
Potiphar.
Okay,
Potiphar was.
I was asking for clarification.
I didn't hear the last part of your statement. Yeah. Potiphar was likely a eunuch because it was the custom, according to Josephus, Flavius Josephus, and he records the history of the Jews in a book that's called the Talmud. Now, the Talmud is a text of the rabbis, and it records, all of the daily living activities of the Jewish people, and also the Gemara, which was just books that if you were a Jew, you'd not understand exactly what they meant. They were books that, under the Pentateuch or the Torah, were second in authority for the Jewish people. And you might say, well, if my neighbor's cow comes over and eats up part of the grass out in my field, what am I to do? And the rabbi would go back and look at the Talmud, and he might say, well, then you let your cow go over and eat in his field for 2 days, and it's equitable. It's all done. So you get that a little bit mixed up. I do sometimes, but the Talmud is the text of the rabbis and contains the Mishnah and the other book that they use. And the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also referred to as the Pentateuch, and the Pentateuch means 5 scrolls. So anyway, this is a writing of Josephus. Now, Josephus was a historian at first. Josephus was a Jew, and he was a radical, and so he was a zealot. And so the Lord chose one of his apostles to be a follower and teacher after his departure, and he was a zealot as well. And his name was what? Simon, wasn't it? Simon the Zealot. Well, what these folks believed in is that they didn't think that the Romans had any authority over the Jewish people, and so they tried to overthrow the Roman government. And at first, Josephus was a zealot and was involved in that, and when that was put down by the Romans, the fellow that had him under him was impressed with his abilities, and so he sort of adopted him into the Roman culture. And so then he was referred to as Flavius Josephus, which was the Roman connotation of who he was. And he recorded history. So if I referred to Josephus, that's the reason why, because he was alive, he was contemporary with the Jewish people at the time of Jesus. He was here on the earth, and so he referred to the Talmud and the Mishnah in his writings. So he's the one that refers to Potiphar as a eunuch. And it was a custom in ancient pagan countries, beginning as Sumerians, to require the officers associated closely with the king's court to be made eunuchs, and to minimize the possibility of taking over the kingdom. So well, that's a good question. And as I read and studied this, commentators seem to think that it would have either been for political reasons because of his position, or possibly she had married him because he was a political official. A little uncertainty there. And I might add this, that it's the comments of Josephus, which was very astute in those things at that time, that he was a eunuch. I mean, there's a possibility he may not have been, but the commenters, or the people who write commentaries, seem to think that that was the case. So, and why did he have a wife? Maybe for political reasons. Good question. All right, so this brings us up to Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Any more questions or comments? And it came to pass after these things that the master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said unto his master's wife, "Behold, my master has wrought not, behold, my master's rotten that what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath into my hand. There is none greater in this house than I. Neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How can I do this great wickedness against God? And it came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie with her or to be with her. And it came to pass about that time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was no men in the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me, and he left his garment in her hand and fled, and got him out. And it came to pass, as when he saw that he had left his garment, she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and fled forth, that she called unto the men of the house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought a Hebrew in unto us to mark us, and came unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. Let's stop right there for just a minute and see what's happening here. She is after Joseph. I mean, she's after him with both hands, so to speak. And she's tormenting him day by day. It wasn't just one time. The scripture tells us that it was day by day. So every day she is trying to tempt him to lie with her. Of course, it makes sense that if her husband, Potiphar, was a eunuch, that this would be a natural desire of the woman, I suppose, without a husband. So she's trying to convince Joseph that he needs to lie with her. And he is refusing. And now then, after this, she grabs him, and he leaves his coat in her hands, and he takes off. So one thing that we might take from that is that sometimes when we are tempted to sin, the best thing to do is to take off, especially in this case where Joseph was. Now, this is not a show that he was a coward. It just meant that sometimes the best thing to do in temptation of sin is to flee. Isn't that right, Walter? That's exactly right. So anyway, so that's what he does here. He's, first of all, he's told her that he's not going to sin with her. Brother Terry's got a comment.
First of all, he told him that the sin would be against his master and with God. He realized the sin was against God, and that's needs to be impressed on everyone today. When we sin, do something that we should not, it's a sin against God.
Absolutely. He said the sin was against his master and against God. And so it was with the prodigal son in Luke 15 and verse 18, and said, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. So it would not only be a sin against his master. And what had Potiphar done for Joseph at this time? Nothing but good. Nothing but good. He had elevated him to a position of authority in his own house and had kept nothing back from him except for his wife. And so here Joseph is, he's telling her it would be a sin against my master who has done me no wrong. He's elevated me to a position of authority. So why should I do that? And when she persists, she grabs his garment, and so he leaves. He runs away. So any other comments? Yes, Brother Dan.
Yeah, just similar to what Terry's saying, I've always looked at this being a lesson of self-control.
Yes.
Joseph had self-control, and we need to view when he says that I would have sinned against Potiphar and I would have sinned against God. And that's the sin of adultery does go into that sin of two peoples,
True.
God and that husband. The husband owns his wife from the standpoint of that relationship. He has rights and she has rights. And when that's violated, there's several different sins on different levels that enters into. Joseph didn't covet her. There's coveting that comes into the desires of crossing that line of adultery. Then that taking of ownership as if it is his wife crosses and takes the ownership of someone else's, and that's stealing. That's basically stealing someone else's wife. He had no rights to that. And then the violation that God said, thou shalt not commit adultery.
Right.
So there's various levels that goes into, but the control that a young man, Joseph, exercises in this instance is really fairly profound, because most people probably would have failed, honestly. Looking at that's an easy place for a young man desirous of, nowhere do you see in Joseph's life does he ever complain about being the victim. And here he is, elevated and made a very good go of it, if you will. He'd done very well. It would have been a very easy thing for pride to slide in very quietly into his life, but it doesn't. And you see sold into slavery, that he still has his God in the forefront of his mind, that is his character walk. And so he follows that control and is very much compromised, even as she kind of comes back after he runs and she's got his garment, as you're going to get to. But I just wanted to say, the control that I see here in Joseph is not accidental. And it's worth mentioning this, that, that's a good line for us to follow in a world today that has no problem doing any of these things that Joseph was given to.
Right. Well, I might say, too, that here Joseph is in a pagan culture. There's multiple gods that they worship, and one of those things that they felt was a act of worship was, the goddess Diana. Now, I don't think she was probably around in Egypt at this time, but I mean, this was the mindset of those people, that a sexual act would sometimes be considered an act of worship. Now, whether or not she was minded, what she had that intention in her mind, I think she wanted to lie with him. And so he exercises a lot of control, because he's probably a very young man, probably in his teenage years, maybe he might have been as old as 17, 18 years old, something like that. And so how many hormones are raging when you're 17 or 18? A lot, yeah. But that's natural. That's what God put in us. So, Brother Brian.
Just want to add what Dan was saying. I've been guilty of reading this passage thinking of it as a one-time occurrence, but that's not what it was. And like Dan was saying, self-control. She was doing this every day. This is day by day. So every day she was propositioning this. This is an assumption on my part, but I'm assuming this is not her first time of leading someone into her bedchamber.
So say the other commentators.
She got away with it. Who are you to deny me? And then he's controlling himself. He knows when he goes in that house to serve for the day, he's going to be propositioned, and he goes about his business doing his best to keep her
Absolutely.
pushed away.
Yeah, good point, good point. Now, yes. Sister Kathy.
One of the things that struck me in this too is that I think Joseph realized where his success came from. And so to be able to be faithful to that, you know, he knew his success came from God. He was faithful to God. And so I think that's a good lesson for us to, you know,
Amen.
remember that where our success comes from, and know, you know, because of the blessings that we receive, God is causing our success.
Absolutely. And you know, just to embellish this just a little further, you know, all the men are gone out of the house. So I'm sure she orchestrated that. I mean, she just continually laying her plot. So where's Joseph at? He has been sold into slavery. He's been violated by his brothers, thrown into that pit, sold, given to the Ishmaelites, and taken down to Egypt and sold into this man's house. So you see how Satan must have been working on his psyche. You know, here it is, it's private. I'm a long ways from home. And this is just, as Brother Brian indicated, that a lot of commentators throw these things out. It must have been going through the mindset of this young man and how Satan was tempting him. So why did God allow these things to happen to Joseph? Well, God had great things in store for him. And by these trials and tribulations that he's going through now, don't you think that'll strengthen him, his resolve to run this whole country and actually be over that part of the whole world because of this famine that's coming up? But that's up in the future here. So good points, good points. Brother Haley.
Larry, I'm glad that you brought that out. Oftentimes, to know the end of the story helps you understand the middle of the story and everything that's going on. And you brought out a good point. And in Genesis 53, at the end of his story, verse 20, he said, Joseph said, "But you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good,
Absolutely.
in order to bring about, as it were, this day to save many people alive." There is a reason
God
that
had
he's
a plan.
going through this.
God had a plan. Well, how does that help me? How does this story help me today? Sometimes we go through a lot of things in our life. Sometimes they're almost unbearable. And many of you have been in that position, lost a husband, lost a wife, lost a mother, had many things happen to you. Brother James has lost some legs, going through that trial still yet, going through something you got to get a vow put in to just to go on with life. So you might ask yourself, why sometimes? Why? Why does this happen to me? It's because God has got something planned for you. God's not done with you. And those experiences, if we look to God like Joseph did, then it will strengthen our resolve to be stronger servants of his, more meat for the master's use. Brother Haley.
I think too that when we look at this and we understand what's going on, even though he's growing and he's strengthening in his relationship to God, it's not that he's living just for himself. And that's one thing that we need to understand is that God has a purpose for us, not just inside of his and our relationship, but also to help those that are around us and to be that strength for them as well. So we have, I always called it a train. We have a train that walks and goes behind us as we walk through our lives that we affect those people one way or the other. And
Yes.
and we need to keep that in our mind as we live and work in God's kingdom here on earth.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Sister Betty's got a comment. Beverly, I mean. Not Betty.
It reminds me of Romans 8:28, one of my favorite verses that I'll read it. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. It doesn't necessarily say that all things seem to be good at the time, but they work together for good.
Amen.
And sometimes we don't know that till we look back and see, where we've been, how far we've come, and where we are now. Blessed.
Thank you for those points. Absolutely. Those things strengthen us to be better servants for the Master's use. We may not understand it all. Oh, my goodness. All right, let's see. We got a few more minutes left. And she called unto the men of the house and spake to them, saying, now here's a case where she's going to cover up her sin with another sin. And she says, she has brought a Hebrew into us to mock us, and he came into me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. All right, now, there is a law in Deuteronomy that says that if a woman is caught in a place where there's no help by a man and commits a sexual act with her and forces her, if she cries out, then she's not deemed guilty of that. And where I'm coming from there, Deuteronomy 22 and 24. And you shall bring them both into the gate of, they're discovered, and so they're brought into the gate of the city, and you shall stone them with stones that they die. The damsel, because she cried not. So you see, if she cried out, then she would be deemed not guilty. Being in the city, and the man, because he hath humbled his neighbor's wife, so he shall be put away from evil among you. So if she cried out, and here she's making the point, even among the Egyptians, and it came to pass when he heard that I lifted up my voice and I cried, and left his garment in me and fled out. See, she's trying to cover up her sin with another sin. And she laid his garment by her until his Lord came home. Wait till he comes home, I want to tell him. And she spake to him according to these words, the Hebrew servant which thou hast brought to us. Now, what's she doing here? What's she doing here? Well, here's what you done. You brought in that Hebrew, and look what he's done now. You see, who's she laying the blame on? Potiphar. Said, you brought him in. Now look what's happened. The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought in to us to mock me, and it came to pass as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. It came to pass when his master heard these words which he spake unto him, saying, after this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. Well, naturally, I mean, he's found out that from her, but we're going to see. I don't think we have time to discover that right now. How much time we got left? 5 minutes? 5 minutes? All right. I do not think that Potiphar fully believed his wife. And we're going to find out why here. And Joseph's master took him and put him in prison. Well, now, first of all, I want you to notice he just takes him and immediately puts him in prison. There's no trial. You don't have to go through any procedure. You just take that man, put him in prison. Well, I'll tell you why. Because Potiphar has the oversight of the prison. And so he put him in prison in a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph. You see, here's another instance. The Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. The keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were in the prison. Whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. In other words, nothing was done in the prison without Joseph's authority over it. And the keeper of the prison looked not on anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that he did, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. So here's another instance where even though Joseph is in another demeaning position, you know, what's going to happen next? You know, I've been thrown into a pit, I've been sold into slavery, and now I'm in jail. I've thrown into jail, and it's not my fault. Well, we're going to find out. We may not have time to discover it. Brother Paul may have to talk about it when he gets back, but he's going to complain a little bit here in just a little, but he's going to be down there in this prison. He's going to be confined there with some of the other members of Pharaoh's court. And we'll find out what happens there in chapter number 40 and after that. Because I think that Joseph, there's many things that surround this that we probably don't see because we don't know the complete history and the customs of the people, but we'll see if we can't dig some of those out as we go into the 40th chapter. Any more comments or questions? Yes, Brother Ron.
I want to take us back just a little bit to what we were talking about a moment ago, and how that all things work good for those that love the Lord, and also how Joseph was about his father's business. But when we read about Jesus and how he hung back when he was 12 years old, and his folks were looking for him, and they found him in the temple, and his answer was, "Why did you seek me? Didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business?" Mm-hmm. So when God preserves us from various things, are we just waiting for something to, a lightning bolt to tell us, this is what he saved me for? I don't think so. I think that if we were working for the Lord and we're about our Father's business before that thing came on, which Joseph was, then after those things happen, he's preserved us for this. We're still going to be about our Father's business. It may be a little bit different business, but it's still going to be his business, and we're still going to be a servant of the Most High God. So sometimes we look around and we say, well, what am I waiting for? Something's got to happen here so I know what to do. Well, you can't do everything, but you can do something. You can't help everyone, but you can help someone.
Absolutely.
And we've got to be about our Father's business, regardless of what calamity comes upon us.
Absolutely. Good point, Ron. I might just add that Josephus, this same writer, says that she probably, according to the Talmud, that she promised him absolute secrecy and greater advancements. In other words, he is already over the house of Potiphar. He said, if you'll do this thing, I'll see to it that you get more authority. So that's the way Josephus records this. All right, I guess our time's about up. So I don't want to get into the 40th chapter, but there's some real good material in the 40th chapter and beyond about this this story that the Lord unfolded to us by this faithful man.